welcome back to the Club Innovators Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Kyle Bradburn, and with me today is Greg Rotzell, the VP of Operations for Capstone Hospitality, and another Greg Poirier, who is the Director of Green Hospitality and Green Lodging Certifications at Audubon International. Gentlemen, welcome to Club Innovators Podcast.
Great to be here.
So today, Greg Poirier, we're going to focus on you. Greg Rotzell, we'll just refer to you as Rotzell for the rest of the episode so we don't get caught up here. But
Sounds
Greg, we really want to talk to you today kind of about your role at Audubon International. So can you kind of share your primary responsibilities in your role at Audubon?
Sure. Thanks very much for the opportunity. So with Audubon International, my responsibilities are any hospitality certification programs, which we have fall into most of the buckets are hotels and resorts and a little bit of destination attractions. So
yeah, absolutely.
Soup to nuts, criteria, relationships, helping audits. I do whatever it takes to help drive the sustainability in the industry that I love so much.
Yeah, that's awesome. So was there anything that really inspired you to come into this role? How does one end up in this particular role?
Well, in my case, I think circumstances and timing is always a part. I'm a career hotelier, 20-something years in operations, maybe 15 to 20 years in consulting and selling technology, a lot of which were sustainability related. And I just think that I'm a late boomer generation that has to be in the game all the way down to Gen Z and Alpha and lock arms to try to clean up some of the messes that we collectively have accumulated over time, not by design, but certainly by results. So I still have a lot to give, and I just think the mission is amazing.
Yeah, it's great. And obviously, as the dad of a Gen Alpha, I do appreciate those things, so it's a better world for my daughter, right, as we raise her and throughout.
Right, and I'm a grandfather to a Gen Alpha, too, so I owe it to her, and I'm going to make her understand that when she gets beyond 2 years old.
That's fantastic. So, Audubon International, how do you guys differentiate yourself in the realm of green certifications for resort and hospitality venues?
Sure. First, I think there's a couple areas where we really stand out and differentiate. One is that we cover outdoor resources, built environments in hotels and resorts, and the operation of the teams and communities. And I don't know that any of our set of organizations can cover the full gamut, say at a destination resort that has lots of golf courses and spas and outdoor land or ski resorts. So we're able to do them all. The other areas that our standards are such that we do not allow for, and we'll talk a little more about this later, but we don't allow for virtual audits. It's too serious and complex to give it due justice, and that's a big risk, and we'll touch later. But so those are two of the main things. I think the last one is that we're the original sustainability certification body in the U.S. We've opened up and shared our standards and our criteria for a long time, helping seed groups like the Global Sustainable Tourism Council that came out of the UN and it works globally. So, we've been a stakeholder and a playmaker for a long enough time that we really help set the stage for what now is becoming popular.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Great. So, Greg, another question for you. So just thinking about the Green Lodging Certification Program, what are the core components of that? And how do they address, I guess I would say, the unique needs of destination resorts or hotels?
That's a great question. So the first ones are more cut and dry for everybody to understand. Water quality, water management, waste quality, waste management, recycling, reuse, energy management, having metrics focused on it for improvement, and making that part of your operating of a building that hosts human beings. The second part of that is what makes it unique to hospitality and in destination resorts, where I touched on. We also can do it for the natural landscape, and we can do it for the golf courses and all the other land components in the natural world. But when it comes to the hotel operation, and I'm very passionate about this, most of us in the industry got in because we liked the passion and the interest in being good hosts and the whole spirit of hospitality. And that can get lost in the business of hospitality at times, but there's a little bit of a lack of sticky for the staff and the team to be able to contribute more, because it's you're running on a treadmill and you've got guests checking in and out, and you know your job and you're doing it, but you don't always have the opportunity to practice the hospitality. And the whole green and sustainability brings back an opportunity for the staff to become more enamored or empowered and enabled to make some significant thing happen that they'll be cool, they'll feel it's cool to talk to guests about, and which in turn the guests will then buy into their mission of sustainability. So the industry used to be a place where innovations for the field to take back home. I mean, you experienced something in a resort and you brought it back home. Heck, even technology, pay-per-view started in hotels and then became everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But I remember taking my first snorkeling trip and how impressed I was with the instructors and the coaches and how sensitive they were about touching the coral and how passionate they were about that environment. And I brought that away, and that was enriched my experience scuba diving. So it always is a guest enrichment opportunity, and this gives it kind of democratize it across the staff if they get a green team, successfully involved.
Awesome. So kind of along the same lines, but how do you assess the environmental impact of a resort, and what criteria is really the most crucial for certification?
And that's a great question, and also why it's not just simple, because it involves a couple different areas of the organization itself. So we have basically 5 or 6 buckets. One of it's community engagement. Are you buying local products that have a lesser carbon footprint or that are more sustainable, that help local businesses? How are you engaged in the community? Because let's face it, we need employees from our community, but if we buy through corporate sourcing randomly without being thoughtful, we're missing opportunities to engage places where our employees' families and friends and relatives also work and live. So that's a big component. We have the energy and the things that you can measure through finance and through engineering, your energy bills. It's one thing to know your energy costs. It's another thing to know your consumption per hour and how you can mitigate that. Well, first you have to have it benchmarked. So it encourages that. Same for water and waste. And then we could get into things like food waste. Do you have a food waste program? Are you able to compost? Composting is a great example of something that just doesn't fit 90% of the properties that are urban and suburban because they're not farmers, right? So how do they set it up? It's like, well, we don't have time to figure a pathway out. But now there's commercial technology that in the kitchens, you can just put your food waste, and by tomorrow when you come in, it's a compostable fertilizer for plants, or that you could give away or sell to somebody. And it reduces the weight going to the landfill by 80%. Kind of a no-brainer, even if you just put it in the landfill, because it's healthy. So those are some good examples of the complexities involved. And then there's the things like, how do you communicate with your staff and your stakeholders and your owners and your guests about it? And are you making it part of the experience for retention and recruitment for your employees and for your guests for their experience? So that's most of the areas, right? Yeah.
That's some great stuff. I never would have thought of a lot of those pieces. That makes a lot of sense. I know
they're
you
not
spoke
hard to integrate. That's the biggest fallacy. It's like you just got to hear enough about it to get interested, and it's not high cost and it is high impact. So it's really about adding something that's going to be valuable to you and have a great ROI.
Yeah, and that's why we do this, right? A lot of this is education. Like you're saying, people don't know what they don't know. And so they need to hear about more of these options to have the ability to implement them, right? I can't implement something I've never heard of. So I think that's what's so great about the program. Earlier, you spoke about the dangers of virtual audits. Can you kind of frame that issue and discuss your concerns with it?
Sure. On a global level, the Global Sustainability Council and others have come up with this. I think it's a bit of a too easy in a way to get an accreditation, only because of perception, if not in fact, because of serious problems. So they allow for virtual audits. So typically any organization such as Audubon International or the other certification bodies, you have to fill out basically a long, detailed, kind of scientifically based questionnaire with backup. And then you get an audit of it to make sure your claims of sustainability have been audited and are in fact true. And the audits plays a critical role in the market because consumers want to be able to trust in the audit process and the certification process of which it's tied. Unfortunately, perception of a virtual audit right off the bat sounds like you're not very committed because you either do an on-site audit, which you have to reimburse the travel expenses, so all of us, or you can just have a video camera and agree to do things that way, which there's no doubt can be gamed or manipulated, or you can't get the same stuff as walking around a property for 2 hours meeting with people for 2 hours, and then doing the audit for the last 2 hours, and which is a very typical day of a life of a site auditor. And unfortunately, we can't take the risk as a market to support virtual audits, because if it hurts, it blows back to one property, it hurts the whole industry. Yep. Booking.com, Skift wrote a report in April that they had been called out for their claims for their properties, which got to the point it was like 25% of them were sustainable. And that's because the market wants to book in sustainable hotels, and they're doing it a service. Because of regulatory concerns and other potential perceptions, they've quickly taken them all off and redone their program. So it was a masterclass in crisis mitigation. But it's a stark warning that there's a risk, and it's not a risk we're taking, in our view, to do virtual audits, and we don't offer them. And sadly, other groups that do offer this do offer them, and they're supported globally currently. And I think that there's going to be a sphincter effect of just not wanting to spend on travel reimbursement, saving a little bit, and at the end of the day, there's a lot more risk. It's not worth it.
Yeah, so you kind of talked about, you touched on it right there about what blowbacking is, what can happen with the hotel or resort if any of that doesn't work out. Why don't we talk about the positives of that green certification? How does that benefit a hotel or a resort, whether it's reputation or operations? How do these things benefit? If I own a hotel and I'm coming to you, hey, Greg, what are the benefits here?
Absolutely. So if you just want to talk financial, just by measuring your energy and water consumption, you will focus on it more and you'll find ways to lower it. That's just all business 101. You focus on the issues and you'll see improvement. Not only that, there's lots of technology available today that has a very detailed, specific ROI for doing so. You can implement a guest room energy management network today that has less than a 3-year ROI to pay back the investment. That's before available rebates. And immediately, day one, you're going to save, on average, 30% or more of your monthly energy bill for the whole hotel, your second biggest expense.
Yeah.
And that's just to call one out that's been out there for a long time. Unfortunately, they're only maybe 13% penetration in the industry so far. So there's a lot of open road to make that a better program and more useful for everybody and save a lot of money. From HR perspective, and these are Deloitte and IBM studies this year that show 80% more interest in applicants if they believe the place they're applying for has an authentic sustainability program, and 70% more job satisfaction, which speaks to retention of employees for places that, because they're so proud to work in one that has an active program. So there's, the cost of losing one employee and the turnover and hiring another is calculable, and it's in this industry, it's in big numbers. So that covers a couple of the ROIs. The ones I like are the engagement in the community, what you end up doing by having a little bit of change in your procurement practices with some local vendors, and what that does where your employees live and work, both get you candidate flow, but really strengthen your communities, help support a smaller business. And they spend enough money. This is not anything that's going to run up the tab and the expenses. They'll more than save for by every employee that doesn't turn over as often. So in balance, there's just so many benefits.
Yeah, and I might answer the next question that I'm going to ask, but just thinking about that, Greg, that's amazing, right? We are in a time and place in the world where some businesses are trying to save money. Some businesses are spending as much money as possible because they know that it makes sense for them, right? This is something where everyone's trying to be educated. Everyone is trying to figure out the best way of doing things. And I think that's where you come into play, where Audubon International comes into play to say, hey, we provide you that blueprint that you follow, and we educate you so that you can do things the right way, right? Like when it comes down to it, I feel like that is just the most important thing. And instead of whoever it is, the general manager at a hotel or somebody along those lines that has to work day in and day out educating themselves on this elsewhere potentially, that's where Audubon International comes in. And you come in to say, hey, we have this, let us walk you through it. And it's going to save you a lot of time, when you are implementing all these different programs and ways to save. And it is also going to save you money as you start working through this, and it's going to make sense for you. It's going to make sense for your business.
And it's going to improve your scorecard, and you're going to go from, silver to gold to platinum, because and each step is going to save you money and strengthen your team along the way. So again, it's a support culture and goal. One thing I didn't touch on, because I talked about saving on the expenses, right? And there's a lot of real money involved there on the ROI. But then there's also increased revenue. All these groups are putting out statistics that people are looking for sustainable destinations in their travel. If they're given a choice between two and one's more sustainable and everything else is fairly equal, they're going to pick the sustainability one. A travelist is going to be putting that in the next 5 years or less. They're going to be putting that front and center when you're booking on any online travel agency like Expedia, Booking.com, and all those. Today, we upload monthly or quarterly, depending on the organization, all of our members, which is the requirement to get a sustainability tag with the online travel agency world. And every hotel today has a good percentage of the mix of their transient business is because of their opening and shutting availability valves that are for the booking engines out there for the online travel market. So, we're going to increase bookings. We're going to increase your chance of capturing the sustainably conscious traveler.
Absolutely. No, I think that makes complete sense. I mean, even when I'm looking through whatever it may be, booking a hotel or booking flights as well, they show you the impact.
The carbon impact is what Travelist actually, that was Travelist partnering with Google and Sabre Hospitality and all the airline distribution networks. That was their first accomplishment. It took them 5 years to get there, and now it's getting mainstream. So it's right there at the choice of decision time. And that's going to be a powerful way to grow the data to help encourage the market to move a little quicker because it needs to. Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's get into trends a little bit. So Greg, when it comes to trends like regenerative tourism and eco-luxury influencing the hospitality industry, what do you see, I guess, over the next 5 years when it comes to those types of trends?
Well, there's no doubt that COVID alone has kind of helped illuminate what to expect is available. And the innovative market of hoteliers, especially independent hoteliers, they created glamping and luxury travel that's eco-oriented. And they did it because we had to isolate, and it just accelerated it. But it also maintains now after COVID, it's not going away. So you see companies like Marriott buying brands of outdoor venue sites, right? Which they just announced a couple of weeks ago to add to their portfolio. I see an acceleration in that, but I also see it like if you look at SH Hotels, One Hotels, and Treehouse. I mean, the people behind these very eco-centered brands and properties, they're the same ones that developed Starwood as a hotel group and created how cool W was when it first came out in the market, and all these great brands because they saw something that wasn't being well captured. And now they're putting all their effort into these super sustainable hotel developments. And I think that's a precursor to where the industry likes to follow because we kind of herd mentality a bit, right? So I think we're seeing now what's going to become a bigger proportion of the market within 5 years.
Yeah. So speaking of kind of that projection, I'm going to ask you, is there any existing emerging technologies or innovations in sustainability that you believe are also going to revolutionize the hospitality sector, maybe in the next 5 to 10 years as well?
Well, certainly, and I've touched on too, I think there's going to be a tremendous growth in the energy management tools that are out there in adoption and using because it makes total money sense to do it now. And now it makes sustainability sense because it gives you metrics and you can be proud of them and export them. I'll call out a company, BioGreen 360. Very cool. They're one of the ones, but they're the ones that I know have been very well piloted. They've been involved in their software development. I know people at Marriott that helped with that. And they have that commercial food waste product that sits in the kitchen right where the food is being made for your throwing away your food waste that then turns it into something safe, something that adds new value and can be marketed on its own. Worst case scenario is 80% less volume to a landfill. That's actually a healthy contribution to the landfill. So even if you don't do anything with it, it's a good thing and you're saving time and money. So those are ones that come. Another one is monitoring water flow through toilets sexy subject, real high cost to hotels. One of those running for 24 hours when it's non-occupied because it can't refill, kind of helps justify the expense. So I'm seeing a lot of that. Another one is air quality monitoring that can be put in guest rooms that can detect any kind of smoke, all kinds of other things. Very scientific, kind of geeky, hard to explain for me still, but I know I've seen these are the innovations that have already come to market, but they're at the seed stage. They're at the early adopters stage of deployment. And I see those growing, and that's going to invite other existing innovators to get in and find other creative ways. So I think the energy is there for a lot of new development too with technology.
Yeah. Is that something, Greg, that you're constantly scouring the internet and constantly getting updates about all the different technologies out there? Is that something you're really, really locked in on?
Well, certainly. And, we can put my LinkedIn link on here. That'd be great.
Yeah.
I'm growing that pool and I'm doing a lot of action. And yes, I'm finding people on it and they're finding me and asking if they can present to me and talk to me. And I welcome it because I think we're all warriors in what is a grassroots effort on sustainability. Yep. And so everybody has a lot of contribution and they can have a lot of impact. Any one person. We have a big client with, dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of property that all came because of one person in their organization found us, thought it was cool, did it for their property. Their GM got the regional properties all done on board, and then they made it as a corporate standard. And they were doing this 10, 15 years ago, right? So this is something that one person can always have a big impact. And we all need to find places we can impact because otherwise the world's a little boring.
Yeah, it's a great way of putting it. Sticking with impacts, and this is maybe a multifaceted question, but in your mind, what steps can resorts take to align with global hospitality sustainability standards working with Audubon International? And do they significantly disrupt their existing operations?
Two excellent questions. So the first one's easy because yes, and we have a public available statement on the website when you go to join lodging, Green Lodging, you go to Green Lodging, two things pop up, join, and our certification standards. This is a 10-page, very detailed document that goes through each of the buckets that you could be measuring against. They meet ISO standards, which are globally set, not necessarily always enforceable, but if you want to know what's going on, that's your template. And then the other thing is just make the commitment and join, becoming a member, $500 one time. That's nothing. Paying your first year's dues. That's all tax deductible because we're a nonprofit and it goes into a different bucket because of being a nonprofit 501c3. And then it's just then you get the designation application. And that's when your work starts. And that document I referred to that's publicly available is a great way to get prepared to answer the questions and complete the assessment, from which then leads to a certification. So it's not really hard. It's a few steps. And now the other side of your question was, how does it disrupt your property? Well, I can tell you if I'm running a resort and I've got 10 years of resort general manager experience where I own the P&L and the team's success, it's not disruptive at all. It's only disruptive if you're not buying into it and you're trying to get others to, right? So you have to have alignment that it's of value and it's important. Because if you don't, that's the way you're going to be reflected amongst your organization. So really, the only thing that's disruptive is that you're going to create a little extra time. But I'm going to go back to the green team. So I'm an aspiring hotelier. I've gotten my first supervisor role in the front desk. And I'm always looking for more ways that will shine light on me to get me promoted. I mean, that's the way the hotel career works. That's the way mine worked. That's the way it still works today, and that's the way it's going to work tomorrow. If I know that there's a green team, and I know that they get to meet quarterly with an executive, and that they get to meet on their own, and they come up with good things, all it's going to take away time from is the time that every single employee is spending on their phone scrolling something not work-related today. So I wouldn't call that disruptive. I'd call that a way to alternate that energy and that use of time to do something that's maybe a gamified tool that is available for the industry today to coordinate their goals on sustainability. So it's another emergent technology I left out, but I think is really big because it's got to be made simple for the staffs to get involved and make it fun. Because if it's not fun, who wants to do it? Time's short.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, can you share a success story of one of these resorts that has gone through your program and maybe changed their footprint and in some other things and aspects?
Sure. So, I mean, all of the members that are new members that I've helped on board, for whatever reason, they came to us. Their golf course was already approved, but the resort wasn't. A variety of different ones, and every one of them, wants to get into. If none of them want to fill out their designation application and send it in the next week, because they want to make sure everybody wants to do something and get a prize. Today, if you're a resort that's already gotten low flow toilets, you've bought all LED lights and converted. I mean, you can't even find LED lights and low flow plumbing. I mean, hard flow plumbing anymore. It really doesn't exist. But you could have a property that's old enough that you haven't done any of that yet. Not too much on the light bulbs. Those are things you're going to get scored points for. So the chances of getting a bronze certification are pretty good, right? Yeah. Nothing's assured, but the whole idea is you got to find a place of engagement. And wherever you are today, you're going to probably get to one level, or quickly after you do it within the year, you can get to that first level. And you're going to have a roadmap of what you can and should do first. And most of them don't cost new money and investment for CapEx. Most of them are instituting part of it within your culture as a priority. That's easily done. And again, the retention, the recruitment, getting teams excited about working there, beyond giving real hospitality and then sharing it with guests, those are byproducts of just doing the right thing. And all you got to do is invite them to participate.
Yeah. So, you kind of briefly touched on it earlier. How do you discuss the metrics and kind of the ROI of committing to a green certification? If you're talking to a resort owner or a general manager right now, what's for lack of a better term, what's the pitch on the ROI and the return?
Right. Well, I kind of go past, the ROI often because people are reaching out or want to do the right thing, or they're being told they're going to get certified this year. So they know it's coming. But the ROIs are many, right? So we're a certification body, and I've done a lot of sales with quotas and drives and programs. And although we do have a pipeline and a funnel and prospects and all that type of stuff, we really are evangelists. And then since we don't cost a lot of money and you get a lot of return, it's not too much on the sales of the money. But there is going to be a natural instinct and resistance to spending CapEx on sustainability if you haven't already bought in. But groups, you look at the big ownership groups like Host Hotels and Resorts, they got billions of dollars in secured funds for green initiatives. And they're not the only ones. There's a lot of money ready for it, not because people are being just good. They like it because it aligns being good and doing the right thing with actually smart investments that make your asset and your business more valuable. So I think it kind of sells itself. I do always touch on all these different categories, mainly because I don't want the chief engineer to try to own it alone. And honestly, they can't have a green team without evangelists from the general manager, the HR, food and beverage, and rooms. So they all need to be part of it.
Yeah. And kind of going off what you just said, how do you guys, how does Audubon International, that green hospitality certification, how do you foster partnerships between resorts and local communities and environmental organizations to enhance sustainability, right? You just kind of talked about that ecosystem at the resort, but what about the bigger ecosystem and community around the resort?
Sure. Well, we always are getting approached and finding new products and solutions that we can evangelize and we can share. And we do a lot of that best practice sharing. I do it with every site and every customer, every member, every prospect all the time. So there's a lot of added value just for the time and our unique view that we get. We can offer that kind of extra stuff easily, like breathing air, because we're breathing it all day long. We'll be starting to do some community stuff within our membership, and to the extent where it makes sense, like this podcast, to the broader community, and just talking up these things with our sort of competitors. But I think right now there's just a huge pie, and it's not about what you're going to slice it into, because I get a sense sometimes there are always actors that are trying to control the market, and sadly that to me just reeks of slowing down progress and getting sustainability enacted in the field. And we can't wait. We need it to start, and we need it to grow.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about the wildfires in California, but we're all talking about the wildfires in Los Angeles, right? So there's a lot of issues that, and we don't want to wait to get them legislated.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just share. So those that are old enough to remember when the American with Disabilities Act was legislatively passed, the industry embraced it. But it was after it was legislatively passed. It
Yeah.
turned out it was not a big deal. Yes, new builds had to create a little bit extra funding for a little bit different. Designers had to design things a little different. Renovations had to do a little different. But all in all, it didn't impact or slow down the growth and success of the industry. We need to look at sustainability in that same vein. And if we wait, it's going to be legislatively required. And so why not just, we know it's needed, let's do it.
Yeah, get ahead of the curve, right? Because it's going to be easier if you get ahead of it now than when it's legislated, just like you said, right?
And your customers are asking for it. Your staff wants it. So why wouldn't you do it? Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So you just kind of briefly touched on it. You know, how do you guys collaborate with other industry players and or governmental organizations to promote these initiatives?
Sure. So good examples, the Global Sustainability Tourism Council, funded originally through the UN. They reached out to us 10, 12 years ago when they were just starting to form. So we went to several meetings. We gave out all of our designation application details at the time. We basically gave them everything we had and we've been working with, as did our sister organizations that were already around at that time. And from there, they've grown it into a kind of a global standards. That's the way they see themselves. Although Travelist also is global and has their own criteria, of which there's some overlap. So with Travelist, we've already applied and been approved. They're very stream and quick and efficient process. That's the one that Prince Harry is his philanthropy. The Global Tourism Sustainability Council, we just submitted all of our updated designation criteria so that we would get recognized by them. So one is supporting each initiative. You know, do we really need them? They kind of built things on what we had already given them, and now we got to pay. We're in it together.
Yeah.
They're known more broadly because they got a huge budget and they got a lot of conversation and they're working in every part of the world. So we need to support them. And we need to support Travelist and their endeavors to make it easy for the consumers to help drive it. Because when consumers drive it, owners open their wallets because they're going to get more business, right?
Absolutely.
So there's no bad reason to collaborate. Whenever I run into Nick Levesque at Green Key Global out of Canada, and we always have sidebar conversations. We share notes on what we're either concerned that we both share or interests we both share. And we're collaborators in arms, even if we might compete for business.
Competition breeds greatness. I always tell people that all the time, and I'm a big believer in that. So
it makes us all better. That's
it
right.
really does. So, all right. So kind of moving to the future of Audubon International, what are the long-term goals for the Green Hospitality and Green Lodging Certifications program?
Sure. So we're in the first round of revisions of our standards criteria that impact our designation application. We're going to be broadening those from select service, differentiating select service hospitality to full service. We're probably adding destinations, attractions, but more importantly, because we already do them under hospitality, we're going to frame it more about what's a significant historic, cultural, or community value, not just that they're an entity that goes on, because we can't do everybody and do them all well. And we want to coordinate. So we're going to broaden and redefine those a little bit more in detail. And then we're going to be revisiting for revision and bringing in our members and the outside community to participate in the development of those so that we're not missing anything. And we might get some good insight because we don't know it all. We just know enough.
I love that right there. All right. So Greg, we're going to finish up with one last question here. We appreciate all your time that you're taking today to chat with us. So what advice would you give to a resort manager who is just beginning their journey towards sustainability, right? I'm a brand new resort manager, or I'm early on in my career and I stumble across, I say, we got to do something for sustainability, but I have no idea where to start. What kind of advice would you give to that person?
Well, first, understand that your first year's commitment, it might be $1,000 for most hotels because of size and scope. After that, it's $500 a year. That could be up to $1,000 if you're a big mega resort. And once every 3 year, a site audit. So it's not about money.
Yeah.
When you have me on site, so it's reach out and choose to engage and let a partner help you, because everything we do has both educational and path to development that you customize to your property in the way that it's written out. So it's just don't be afraid of the unknown. Hopefully get enough known to just reach out. Our fact sheet goes through in detail the process. It's a 2-pager. Our criteria standards, which are pretty globally accepted for all certification bodies, are on the website, easily available, and gives you a lot of work to help prepare for the process. And then just take it for what it's worth. if it's going to help you get your staff more engaged and more committed to your hotel and working there and staying there and talking about cool things to guests and creating that positive vibe internally, man, leverage that. It's available for you, and it's a byproduct of doing this.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So, all right, you just talked about education, all these great things. So real quick, Greg, do you want to talk to people about the website, just where to go on the website if they want to find this information and or how to connect with you on LinkedIn one more time?
Sure enough. So on LinkedIn, I have my full first name. So it's Gregoire. So Gregoire. You'll find me. I'm a bit of a wine geek, so I talk about that a little bit, but mostly it's hospitality and these days all sustainability. Audubon International is not a .com, it's a .org. So find us, look up hospitality, get the information you need, reach out and let us guide you. Whether you want to choose us or not, just become educated. It's really easy. It's quick and it's very written by a hotelier for hoteliers.
Well, Greg, we really appreciate you hopping on today. It's very clear how passionate you are about sustainability in the hotel and resort area, and it's just a really, really fun conversation today. So thank you for coming on the Club Innovators podcast.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Yeah, and Greg, next time we have you on, we're going to talk about wine the entire time. I'd love to hear that from you.
Yeah, not a problem. They're at the finger.
Love it. So for me, Kyle, and for both Gregs, the Club Innovators podcast, we appreciate you listening to this episode, and we will see you next week.